I was recently reading Nikola Tesla's autobiography, and in it he was speaking about some mysterious downloads. How he described it was a flash of light, and in that flash of light, he was able to see his inventions before they were made. He was able to twist them, turn them, pull them apart. Now, he didn't say where he felt these downloads came from, but he did imply that it was somewhere or something outside of his own consciousness. He famously said that his mind is a receiver. So before this video, I was thinking about you and I was thinking, what do you really want to know? What kind of information? And I was thinking, well, maybe you want to know some historical figures, a little bit like Nikola Tesla. And so I was thinking about that, but then I thought, well, I've had first-hand accounts of downloads. Why not just tell you my own experience? So the first question is, what actually is a download? Well, funny enough, Nikola Tesla described it pretty accurately because it's almost like everything has already been done for you. It's like it's not even your thoughts. You can have an idea, and if you really break down an idea, let's say a business idea or a life direction idea, you can see that it's a component of many different things. And so that's pretty easy to understand for us. We like things in neat little categories as human beings because it makes sense in our mind. But downloads, they're very unique because it's almost like it's not our thoughts or the thoughts have been planted there. And many of them are all together. So it's not just like a simple idea. A lot of the downloads I had were very, very complex and they were made up of all of these small ideas that I didn't even have these small ideas in the first place. And that's when it feels it's not from you. A little bit like an epiphany, but much stronger than that. It's very clear, it's very directional. You know that this is for you. It kind of takes you into or shows you potentially a direction that you could take in life. I would describe it as a key that unlocks the door that's in front of you. So, this leads on to a few questions. How do you receive downloads, or even when do you receive downloads? Well, throughout history, people have spoken about receiving downloads most commonly in alternative consciousness states. So, this is people who are in deep trance or meditation. Sometimes it's a flash in the day, like a daydream, and sometimes people need to be in actual dreams, deep REM sleep. But you will notice that once you receive a download, it's very different to a sudden realization or anything else. It feels like it's come from outside of you. It's also important to mention that there are two sides of this coin, two very important things that need to be mentioned. Now, the first one is purification. Now, purification is a very loaded word because it means different things to different people. But in my mind, purification means purifying your mind, body, and soul. So I often didn't receive any kind of downloads or any kinds of dreams. I mean, I dream every single night. I often notice that when myself I'm not purified in some way, when I'm eating bad food, when I'm staying up completely exhausted and not taking care of my mind, bodies, and soul, I don't receive these dreams, and therefore I often don't receive any kind of downloads or anything like that. So, purification comes from looking after yourself. And for some people, that may mean not eating meat. That may mean going to church or doing your spiritual meditation or reading ancient texts. And the other side of the coin, which unfortunately weakens this point a little bit, but I'm going to have to say it because it's true, is that downloads to a certain degree cannot be controlled. Now, what I mean by that is obviously because I've just mentioned purification, right? When it comes to purification, you need to be purified because it helps the message get through. Think about it like that. That's probably the easiest way to explain it. But when it comes to the download itself, one thing that I've often run into is that I cannot control when or how or what is said or anything to do with a download. And also, on the topic of silence, I was going to wait until later to tell you this, but I may as well just do this now. On the topic of silence itself, please don't feel bad if you haven't received any download. And I was very worried about the silence, and this may be something that you are experiencing. Because if people are talking about downloads and messages and meditation states, and you are trying to meditate, you're trying to get messages, you're trying to be more spiritual, and you find that there's nothing. There's silence, there's no one speaking to you, and it can feel very disheartening because you're thinking to yourself, well, am I actually doing this right? Is this the right thing? Am I disconnected spiritually? Why can't I do it? Is there something wrong with me? And then this is where a lot of people, what a lot of people do, and I certainly fall into this category as well, is that we start to over intellectualize spirituality. And so instead of feeling more and going deeper, we start to think more. So please don't feel that you are disconnected from spirituality or that you're doing it wrong or no one's listening to you or anything like that, because that's not true. But I often think about it, silence itself, as when I don't know if you believe in God. I don't know if you what your beliefs are. Some people have beliefs in, well, there's so many new age and new thought movements at the moment. It's hard to keep up. I follow a lot of ancient, slightly occultish studies. And so I take a lot of my knowledge from ancient times. But whatever it is you believe in, religion, spirituality, or whatever, you'll find that most of the teachings speak about that silence, if it's God you believe in, for example, God is in everything. So if God is in everything, then God is also in silence. Okay, and maybe you say, well, I don't believe in God. Okay, well then let's take the simulation. If you believe that we are in fact in a simulation and all of this is a simulation, then everything itself must be part of that simulation. The air, the ground, the sky, and the silence. The silence must also be part of that simulation. And to take it one step further, and as I said, I don't know what your personal beliefs are, but to take it one step further, a lot of the ancient wisdom, particularly, speaks of silence being essential for certain types of people. Now, it doesn't say this in so many words, but it strongly suggests that information is often hidden from people for whatever reason. And this may be the whole thing of why we don't know why we're here on Earth. By the way, this may be much deeper, not just the individual, but collective. And understand, we our mind is wiped, and maybe that's the whole point. We're meant to discover why we're here. But again, that's I'm going to get into a whole different conversation. So let's bring it back. So, with ancient teachings, they often say that the individual, the student, they do not receive any kind of guidance or any support until they are ready. And also, if you think about it, sometimes that can be quite damaging because there may be things that you need to discover, spiritually speaking, about yourself before you're able to be given information. Now, I also would add a caveat just because I've said it in such a way, that does not mean that it's almost like a hierarchy and you need to know more about the world or about yourself before you can receive information. And therefore, people who have received downloads are ahead of you or higher up than you. That's definitely not what I'm talking about because I believe we're all at different stages. I don't know if it's just one lifetime we're experiencing, if we have many, maybe we have 50, 100. And so it's very difficult to kind of assume, but it's just something to remember when you are looking at the topic of downloads. So, with all this being said, what if you still wish to receive downloads today or tonight? What can be done? There are a few different practices that people rely on. One popular method is the 3 night incubation. And this is where every night you set an intention. You can speak it out loud or in your mind before you go to sleep. And over the course of the nights, you will often experience flashes of dreams, maybe symbols. And I was going to refrain from saying this because again it goes on another whole different idea and I need to kind of keep these transmissions fairly tight. But when it comes to the dream itself, sometimes it doesn't come across in English or any language. So you'll find that a lot of downloads are symbolic. Sometimes they're shapes, sometimes they're. And the reason for these, I believe, is because the human brain, the human being's brain is quite limited. And whatever this source is, if this is indeed a source from outside ourselves and we receive these symbolic meanings or whatever it is they give us, you know what it's like, right? It's like I've never taken drugs. I've never taken the is it ayahuasca or the drug in South America that people take? I think that's the name of it. When people take all these drugs and they have these amazing experiences, I have a friend who took one very recently, and I was asking him, what his experience is. I know that it was amazing for him, and I can imagine it's just like wow. But how do you even explain something that's not normal? Maybe you can say it's felt in the body. You feel it in the body, not just in the mind. It's everything. And so the takeaway is this: silence itself is part of our journey. Purification is something that we can do to open up the space, but real downloads, they arrive in their own time.